viewers, a very warm welcome to Pakwan News and the Art Talks. Ehsan Zaman here. Today we have one of the leading actors of Pakistan with us, Mr. Hamza Ali Abbasi. He doesn't need an introduction from anyone, but for those in the UK and the US and across the world, just a brief introduction. Hamza is one of the biggest stars of Pakistan's film and TV industry. He's best known for his roles in the films like Main Hoon Shahid Afridi and War, as well as in TV serials like Pyare Afzal and also Man Mayal, amongst many others. And everyone in Pakistan and globally is looking forward to watch Hamza's upcoming film, The Legend of Maula Jat, directed by Bilal Lashari, where he's co-starring with his co-lead Fawad Khan. So Hamza, welcome on board. And thank you for giving us your precious time. We are truly grateful to you.
No problem at all. Thank you for the kind words, Ehsan.
Hamza, we were doing some research on your background, and I just want to touch briefly upon your background before we move on to your acting. You actually were a very good student. You went to the US, did a bachelor's degree there. Then you also did a master's, I think, from Pakistan. And then you actually successfully passed the CSS exams in Pakistan and joined the Pakistan police. So
yeah, I'll make two corrections there. I did my high school from US and I did my master's in international relations from Islamabad.
Okay.
And yes, you're right. I did pass my CSS. I didn't join the police because I was allotted the police group.
But you didn't join.
Yeah, but since my point was only to pass the exam, so even though I was honored, I feel very honored and grateful to Allah that I was offered police group, but I didn't join as such.
Okay, thanks for correcting me, because I went on online and I got the impression that you did. But still, you passed it and you were given the police role. So the question was, an amazing career ahead of you academically in bureaucracy and police. You could have gone that way. Why did you leave all that to join acting?
Firstly, I did CSS because it was my father's wish that I should pass CSS, because we have a rural background. My mother and my father, they come from a rural background, and there it's considered to be a very big distinction if you qualify as CSS.
It is.
It's considered the mark of intelligence, even though I disagree. Putar ne CSS pass kita. So I did it to pass it, and Alhamdulillah, Allah was kind. I passed it, but then since I got the police group, then my mother got a little emotional that now you can't leave it, you have to join it. So I made her understand that I'm not the government service kind of person. I passed it so you guys would be happy, but I don't think I'm going to join government service. So the point was to pass it and not do the job itself.
Interesting. So you always wanted to do acting. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, actually my master's was in international relations. I've been a jack of all trades and master of none. My master's was in international relations. I love politics, international politics, and but I started doing theater. I mean, that came as it came as a hobby first. Then it became a passion. I really enjoyed it. Then it moved on to TV. Then it moved on to film. So I don't have a degree in it, but it started off as a hobby, but became more of a passion for quite a long time. And then again, Allah has been kind. I mean, I got some degree of success in it. So yeah, then one thing led to another, and that's how I continued my acting career.
Excellent. So Hamza, I'd like to begin with your first directorial feature. You directed a film called Madhouse and the Golden Doll.
Yeah.
Tell us briefly about that film. What inspired you to do it, and what was the outcome?
Well, actually, that was, let's say, my way of getting some hands-on experience on filmmaking and editing and the whole process of filmmaking, because this is way back in 2011,
right,
when film industry of Pakistan was practically non-existent. There was no film industry. This is even before War time, Main Hoon Shahid Afridi time. So there were no films in Pakistan. So I decided to, instead of going to film school, I decided to make a very low budget, simple film to get some hands-on experience on the whole process. Yes, I'm very thankful to friends of mine who supported me in that. So that was my way of getting experience, and and surprisingly, I wrote the script as well, and it got
Whole script.
really, yeah.
Wow.
It was inspired by kind of a true story, and I wanted to make a simple uh, film, a very simple script, because the script kind of dictates the magnitude of the production, right? So I couldn't afford, I didn't have a lot of money, so I wrote a very simple script, which is inspired by a true story.
Wow.
And it did pretty well. It played out at a festival. It had its premiere in PNCA. There were about 300 people who came, and it got a round of applause. And I was pretty happy about it. I was very surprised and happy.
And just going back to the script, you said you wrote the script for the film. Did you take any kind of training online or read any books before you wrote the script, or was this like just? I mean, the whole thing came on top of your head, and you started writing the whole script.
Well, theater actually did give me a lot of training when it comes to scripts and how to write a screenplay and how to do scripts. So theater was a good training ground for that. The story was something that I wrote myself. It came to me because there was a person like that. The main character of the story was this madman, or presumably a madman.
Right.
So a character like that did exist in Multan. I mean, I knew that. So he's a very fascinating person. And so he inspired me, and I came up with the story on my own. It took me a couple of months to write it.
Quick question. Does that man know that the film is based upon him? Does that gentleman know that the movie is based upon him?
Oh, no, that gentleman actually passed away way back in 2000. So, yeah, he was this guy who was a madman slash beggar slash homeless guy who we used to help out sometimes back in Multan. So he was a very ordinary character. I mean, you wouldn't even notice him if you pass him by, but when you get to know his story, it's pretty extraordinary. And that actually led me to write this script. And from the execution point of view as well, because it was a very simple script to execute. So, ek teer se do shikar hote hain na, I told a story that I found very fascinating and ended up making a film that was very cheap. So that was my goal.
So it's really interesting. Before you entered films, you made a film yourself, and it was quite rewarding for you. But the question is, did you want to become a director through that, or did you want to enter the acting field when you were making this movie?
I was already acting in theater. With this film, yeah, it was primarily because I have this passion for filmmaking as well. But basically, when it comes to visual arts, all the aspects really appeal to me, whether it be behind the camera or in front of the camera. So in front of the camera, I was doing, I think at that time, I was kind of in the process of doing VAR, Bilal Ashari's film. Behind the camera, I thought, why not, have a taste of what it's like to be
filmmaking.
That was my directorial pursuit of my directorial passion rather than front of camera.
Indeed. And then you mentioned you were in Bilal Ashari's VAR. I read somewhere that you initially joined him as an assistant director, but then later on he offered you the role. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I remember because we're friends. So it was more of a vague team that got together. I mean, we were helping out in everything, basically, whether it be being assistant or a spot boy or a chai wala. So we were like doing everything right
together.
Yeah. So this role came up when I was, there were a lot of roles. I mean, I was like, you can do this or you can do that. There was a role of a terrorist initially that he thought I could do. And then the actor who was doing my role in VAR, that role that I ended up doing, he backed out.
Wow.
And that's when Bilal was like, why don't you do this? And funnily, I had a beard which I had grown for the role of the terrorist because I was pretty passionate method actor. And I had to shave that off and I had to I had to like trim it really short when I played the police officer. That kind of hurt because it took me a year to grow that beard.
Oh, wow.
But it was more like a vague team helping out, me being a part of that team, helping out in everything, and then an actor backing out of a role. And Bilal saying, why don't you do it? You have theater background. So that's how I ended up doing that.
So Hamza, when you saw the film VAR on the big screen and you saw yourself, in an actor's role, what were your first impressions that okay, I think I can act and I should act more, or were you like, okay, I don't think I should act? What were your first impressions when you saw your own self on the big screen?
The first impression was I need to lose weight. I was a little chubby.
Right.
The second impression was that yes, I think I can act, and I was afraid that because theater is all about exaggerated acting,
True.
exaggerated moves, and cinema is all about very subtle acting.
Subtle acting, true.
I was a little scared that I might not be able to make that transition from theater's extravagant acting to subtle acting. But when I saw myself, I think I was satisfied, and moreover, Bilal was satisfied. He was the director, and he was happy with the way I did the role. That's what mattered to me, and that gave me reassurance that yeah, I can act on the big screen. So that was pretty. You could say that was a pretty. That cemented my confidence to pursue the bigger screen prospects more.
Fascinating. And then Main Hoon Shahid Afridi came after War.
No, even though Shahid Afridi's production started after War's production.
Right.
War started before Shahid Afridi, but it released before War.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So it released before War, and War, I think, released after Main Hoon Shahid.
And which of the films did you really enjoy watching afterwards as a movie?
I think War, because in War I was involved very deeply in the filmmaking process as well. And so that was something that was more like, a child that you see growing in front of you. In Main Hoon Shahid Afridi, I just acted. I particularly had no other role. But War was something which I was really attached to. Bilal's a friend, and we would edit together and we'd sit together and talk about different ideas about the film. So I think War was something which was very rewarding when actually we sat down in the cinema and saw it for the first time.
Very interesting, very interesting. And Hamza, I know you also did Jawani Phir Nahi Aani. It was one of the biggest Pakistan's box office hits. Even Part 2 is probably the biggest right now. But in between, you also did TV serials. I think it was Man Mayal and Pyare Afzal. You got popular mainly because of Pyare Afzal. Is that right?
Yeah, because TV has this massive reach in Pakistan, which cinemas don't have up till now, at least.
Of course. So at any point, did you come to the realization that, okay, now I'm a celebrity? Because after Pyare Afzal and these films, at what point did you feel I am people know me now? Did that realization come to you, or do you still think you are a regular human being?
I am a regular human being, but yeah, I mean, people, when they see you, they recognize you, they take pictures with you. I always see that as a big gift from Allah, and I am very grateful to God for it. And I don't see it as being a celebrity. I just see it as being somebody that some people know and they like and they love, and some people hate you or criticize you. It's part of the package. So I don't let it, I don't define it as being a celebrity. I just think that I did certain projects, people like those projects, and that's TV, it's show business. I mean, that your face is there, so they recognize you. Initially, yeah, it does feel new when it starts happening. It started happening in my theater days as well within Islamabad.
Right.
But I don't see, I don't know. I mean, depends on what you call a celebrity. I think I am a relatively famous person from Pakistan because I'm also known for a lot of other things apart from films. I'm known for my political ventures,
we'll talk about them,
my religious opinions, and etc. etc. So I don't think a celebrity, a public personality would, I think, be a better word. And still, I mean, no matter who the celebrity is or the public person is, the public figure is, they're always human beings, normal human beings in their private lives, unless they're messed up in the head. I mean, that's a different thing. Unless they start thinking of themselves as the center of the universe, I mean, that's different. But everybody is a normal human being at the end of the day.
Hamza, you do realize you have the biggest Twitter following amongst all the celebrities, I think more than Myra Khan even, in Pakistan. Why do you think that is? Unless some people might accuse that you probably buy followers, but others might say you're genuinely active on Twitter. I mean,
if I bought followers, if I bought followers, it wouldn't take me 7 years to have, 3 million or 3.1 million. When you buy followers, it's like about 6 months, you can get 10 million. And if I
Oh,
was to buy followers, I would buy at least 10 million, not 3 million.
all right. Okay. That's fine. But I mean, the matter of fact is you have the highest number of followers on Twitter in Pakistan. I did this research and I didn't I wasn't expecting this, but you actually do have the highest number of followers. And obviously if they're organic followers, so it means that you have a huge following, because Twitter followers are kind of more educated than the Instagram followers. So that means your following is more of, I would say, thinkers and mature people rather than younger generation who dwell on pictures and Instagram. Although you do have more than 500,000 on Instagram as well. But having so many followers on Twitter, I think is probably a good thing for you as well.
I mean, yeah, I think that's because I don't use my social media platforms primarily for commercial activities.
Right.
I use, including Insta, I for the recent past 1-2 years, I haven't used my social media platforms for commercial activities. What I do use them for is to put out my opinions among the people, which I think are good for my country or good generally for people. I choose to give voice to certain people or segments of the society which probably don't have a voice that big. I choose to talk about things that, at least in my head, things that matter. And I think people relate to that. And that's why, I mean, I don't remember the last time I put my own picture on Twitter. I mean, that was a while ago.
Okay. All right.
I'm a big pictures fan. I'm a big words fan. So I think because I say a lot of things and some people,
follow you. Okay.
Yeah, some people can relate to them or they think these things need to be said. That's why maybe they follow me. And some people who think that he shouldn't be saying those things, they also follow and then they bash in the comments. But I think primarily because I don't just talk about my projects or I just don't talk. Well, for now and in the future, I've dedicated myself to talking about religion.
True.
I've decided to use this following, which Allah Ta'ala has given me, to try to give the message of God to people who, in a way that I've understood. And I think that's also something that people really appreciate. Some people, because the interpretation that I have come to agree of Islam, and many people in Pakistan don't agree with it. So I think it's a hodgepodge of a lot of things why people find.
It is. And one always gets the flag for your convictions. So that's it's both ways. There are people to bash you and there are people to admire you. So I think the more vocal you are, the more.
Yeah, but I think that's the case with everything. If everybody likes you, then you're not doing. Then you're doing something really wrong. If everybody likes you, then you're not taking a stand. You don't have an opinion.
True.
And I think the worst thing you can do is try to please everybody. I mean, that's not a very good idea. So that makes you a person then who's going to agree with everything. You would not say anything that matters at the end of the day. So whenever you say something which matters, you'll always have people who disagree. You'll always have people who'll be against what you have said. So that's part of the package. And I've been used to it. In fact, when people do bash me, that's one way of getting your message across to more people. Because, whenever somebody decides to put your status or your tweet there and he bashes you, he's actually presenting my words to his followers. So, that's not a bad thing.
That's not a bad thing, is it? And there's a very popular saying, you can please some people all the time, all the people sometime, but you can't please all the people all the time. So Hamza, just moving on briefly to your last film, and then we'll go back to one more topic. How did you get the role in Jawani Phir Nahi Aani? And the second question is, which film was more pleasurable to watch between War and Jawani Phir Nahi Aani?
Well, I got the role because the director Nadeem Beg, he thought I'm good for the role. They needed somebody with my kind of looks or personality. And then among visually, I think visually Var was a much superior film visually, cinematography wise. But story wise and the content wise, I think Jawani Phir Nayaani, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the comedy in it. It was a great comedy. I mean, Vasi did a great job. So visually, I think cinematography wise, Var was a big treat for the eyes, but story wise and content wise, Jawani Phir Nayaani takes it.
And what do you think were the biggest differences between the direction of Lashari against Nadeem Beg? Both had different genres. He was focusing on action, and Nadeem Beg was on perhaps comedy.
Well, no, I think Bilal was really handicapped because the story of Var was not really a three-dimensional story. It was a very one-track story. It didn't have a lot of twists and turns in it. So I think Bilal is a brilliant director, cinematographer, but he had a very weak story.
Right.
Even then, he somehow managed to make a blockbuster out of it.
He did, yes.
And Nadeem is a very commercial director, and combined with Vase's great story, so that's what made Jawani Phir Nayaani. But Bilal's Maula Jat, because Maula Jat has a very great story. That's why I'm excited about Maula Jat, because it has Bilal's direction, cinematography combined with a great story, great screenplay. So that's definitely something that I'm looking for. I think that'll surpass Jawani Phir Nayaani.
Obviously. But I mean, that was instantly my next question. The Legend of Maula Jat, perhaps the most anticipated film of Pakistan. Number one, what was the experience like? Because it was, I think, completely different to what you've done in the past, number one. It was, I think, perhaps it is partly in Punjabi as well. And last but not least, what was it like working with Fawad Khan on the big screen?
Yeah, Maula Jat is different because it'll be my last film for a very long time because I'm doing other things now.
Sure.
But doing a character actor of that magnitude, I mean, Noori Nath is one of the most legendary characters that Pakistani film industry has seen, played by the likes of Mustafa Qureshi. Redoing that and plus adorning that entire character was something which I think is one of the biggest opportunities that I had in my acting career. And that comes with a certain level of scare also that I don't know I might be able to do justice with it or not, but I hope it went great. And Fawad has been an absolutely amazing person to work with. Right. We had great chemistry. We supported each other. So he's an amazing person to work with.
Super. And last but not least, because you've worked with Bilal for such a long time, and he's also a close friend of yours, what difference did you see in him as a director when he was working in Maula Jat? Did you see him apply new techniques, or did you see him evolve as a director? What were your impressions of him working on Maula Jat?
Well, I saw him because he was completely in control of Maula Jat. He is. Okay. He's written the screenplay, even though the script is written by Nasir Deep Saab, who was the original writer of the film. But Bilal he wrote the screenplay. He's completely in charge of the whole product. So it's like his child. So he's more deeply involved. And that shows on screen. When you'll see it, I mean, it looks like it that this guy has complete charge of the film. And you'll see the aesthetics. Bilal has certain aesthetics that you see in the film, whether it's cinematography or the shooting style that he has. Right. You'll see that pouring out in all its magnificence in Maula Jat because he's in complete control of that. And I think that's what somebody like Bilal needs, to be completely in control of a project to do his best. And that's what Maula Jat is.
Fascinating. And then last but not least, before we move on to another topic, you have a film which apparently has been going on for a long time, Kam Bakht Ishq.
It was Kam Bakht. Yeah, but that I cancelled that because it
okay.
When we started doing it, we were not very well known, me, Shahriyar, Sohai.
Right.
It was a very, very small scale film, almost like a telefilm, like a So, but then in 1 year, we all got really famous, and then it became like Hamzali Abbasi's directorial debut, and I was like, oh no, I mean, it was like a couple of friends making something really small, like Mud House, right? So I then cancelled it because it was a very small scale film, and I think we outgrew it when it comes to our fame or whatever you want to call it. So we outgrew the film. So that's why I thought it's not a good idea.
So the project has been shelved.
Yeah, it has been shelved. Great story though. I might ask somebody to make something on it. Yeah.
Was it inspired on Tom Cruise's Rain Man?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't actually.
Right. Okay.
It was not actually inspired by anything. It was me and Atif and a couple of people I used to do theater with, and we sat down and we just randomly started discussing ideas. It was a very fun, small thing that a couple of friends were doing, and we just suddenly all became really famous. I mean, my Pyare Afzal came out, Sohail's play came out, Shariar's play came out, and then it was not a small thing anymore. And hence it got cancelled. We were like, oh shit, let's not release it. So yeah, that's what happened.
Fascinating. Hamza, before we move on to politics, just a quick question. Why are item numbers so bad? Because I remember when JPNA came out, you apparently objected to one of the item numbers. So a simple question, are they un-Islamic? What's your reasoning behind not really, having them in films?
Let me ask you, what's wrong? What could possibly be wrong with a song where your dance moves are based upon the utter objectification of the woman who's dancing? Doesn't matter if she wants to do it or not. I'm talking from the producer, the director, and the viewer's point of view. What do you think could be wrong with that? That you make a song which focuses on the sexual appeal of the woman. The lyrics also are focused on the sexual appeal of the woman. And it comes on TVs and social media and kids watch it. What do you think could be wrong with it? It's not just a religiously, obviously it's wrong. I mean, religiously.
I mean, I'll be honest. We all grew up watching Indian films and Pakistani Punjabi films.
Yes, and hence look at our sensitivity today. It's having a big negative impact, not just on Pakistan. It's something which is having globally a very negative impact. And we don't need it. This is the lowest form of art to, basically take clothes off from a woman and show her. And people will come and watch it, but that's not art. That's nonsense. And that has not had a very positive impact on the world and our country and India. Even Indians are trying to distance themselves. Even Bollywood is trying to distance themselves from this kind of content, these kind of songs. Even this content is considered now B-grade content even in India.
Right.
In their recent hits, which we consider hits. I mean, I love Three Idiots. It was a great film. It didn't have an item number in it. We don't need to do this. It has a negative impact. It's bad from a religious point of view. It's bad from even a secular point of view. You don't demean a woman on screen and call it art. I mean, it's maybe my opinion, but then why is strip shows not art? I mean, we could show that on our TV from, let's say, 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. So in my head, there's a distinction between art and this stuff, which is not art. And from the religious point of view, we need to make that distinction because unfortunately in our country, there are people who saying all forms of art is prohibited in religion.
Right.
When people like me try to present the case that no, not all forms of art are banned in religion, certain types of things are banned in religion or prohibited from God, then it doesn't serve as a very positive thing for people like me who are trying to go to religious people and saying art is okay when our people are making stuff like this for cinema.
True.
So it's not good in any way. I don't know why we have come to a point in time where things like these are not only okay for us. I mean, we could sit down with our families and watch it, and then we shouldn't complain about the negative impact that it's had and having on our societies.
Okay, I mean, that's a valid comment, and I think people watching you, I think there'd be two kinds of people. One who would say, well, this is a pretty narrow, conservative opinion, and the others would say, yes, I fully agree with you. So we leave it at that.
That's how the world is. I mean,
that's how the world is. Absolutely. And I personally, respect that. But let's move on to something else. You joined sort of, well, not joined officially, but you kind of are involved or were involved in politics, and you started supporting the PTI. You were also their cultural secretary at some point. So first question is, what prompted you to become active, even though in a supporting role in politics? I know you like Imran Khan, you supported him, but what really prompted you?
Well, what prompted me is that our country has issues. Our country is and was being ruled by people who I think is an insult to any country.
Right.
To be ruled by these kind of people. And there's a lot of suffering in our country. And in order to solve it, charity is not the solution. Charity is like a temporary puncture hota hai, temporary puncture to fix something.
Bilkul.
If you want to permanently fix these issues, politics is the way to go. The kind of politics which is happening in Pakistan is another debate, but that was my motivating factor to support people who I think would be good for my country and try to get rid of people who, in my opinion, are what they've done to my country is unbelievable, and they get away with it. So that was my motivation behind it, and now I'm happy that I was part of a struggle and it became successful. So now I've changed my focus to religion altogether for the rest of my life. I mean, that's one thing which I will.
We'll come to it. But my question was, why did you support Imran Khan and PTI? Was it because Imran Khan you thought was perhaps the most cleanest person, the most credible person with a good reputation?
He's an honest person. He doesn't lie. He's an honest person. And the other choices you have are Bilawal and Zardari and Nawaz Sharif, which in my mind, they've been tried and tested. They have done nothing for the country. So yeah, he was a new guy. He's still a new guy. It's just been 2 years. He's honest. That much I can tell you. He's an honest man. He's not corrupt at all. So that's my hope was to see somebody like that sitting on the top and see what happens.
So given that 2 years have passed now with the current government of Imran Khan, why do you think they are so unpopular, number one? And number two, in your opinion, have they made any mistakes?
Number one, I don't think they're unpopular. That's a very big general statement to make. I'm actually not sure what's the popularity graph right now of PTI. I think they're pretty popular in Punjab. They're pretty popular in certain areas. They have made a lot of mistakes, but they've also done a lot of good things as well.
Right.
And that's how any government is. The good thing is that for the first time in 2 years, I see a lot of people being held accountable, even in the government and outside the government, which for me is a very good sign. We have ministers resigning because of an allegation of corruption. We have, people being thrown out because of certain scandals. We've had the sugar report being made public for the first time, at least in my lifetime.
Nothing happened, Hamza. With the sugar report, nothing happened.
Let's see. It's been not a big time. We expected very big changes in a very short amount of time.
In fact, what happened was when the sugar report came out, they moved one minister from one post and simply put him on the other. And
now I focus on the fact that at least a report came out, the sugar report, which held somebody like Jahangir Tareen. I mean, he's a big name in PTI, and it was made public. And we come from a country where not many years ago, an incident like Model Town happened, where 17 people were shot point blank in Lahore at daytime by police, and that report never came out for years and years and years. True. So I think from that place, it's a big step to at least having a report being made public, where a big government personality was held responsible. I think that's a very big deal. So let's see, gradually, I mean, I'm also, I'll make up my mind after 5 years when I go to vote again, inshallah, in the polls. But so far, these small things are giving me a lot of hope for the future, inshallah.
Right. So one last thing, you quit the post of cultural secretary because you said your films do not represent Pakistani culture. Which film were you referring to, JPNA or what?
The film, JPNA, but the film was brilliant. It was just 2 songs that at that time made me really uncomfortable.
Right.
And I just didn't think that I'm eligible to become the cultural secretary of a political party at that time. So yeah, that was the reason. I think I wasn't ready for the responsibility at that time.
Okay. So if you were to advise Imran Khan right now, or if he were to ask you for advice, what advice would you give him?
Do something about the rising extremist elements in Pakistan. Please do something. That would be my request to the army, to the agencies, to Imran Khan, to the government, everybody. Please do something about the rising extremist elements in Pakistan. That'd be my only, I'd beg them about this.
Interesting. And if you were in, let's say, a position of power, what would you do?
I'd fix the education system,
right,
especially about Islam. We need to have a discourse on Islam.
Sure.
We need to sit down and first decide that we should stop threatening each other for presenting their viewpoints on Islam. I would just try to fix this one thing. I'd try to fix our behaviors, attitudes towards religion and our interpretation towards religion. I would try to fix that single-handed. For at least 10 years, I've tried to fix it.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Hamza, just we'll move on to your sort of the last segment of the interview, which is you're moving towards religion. Just a quick question before I ask you some other questions. Were you always religious? Because I read somewhere you became an atheist at some point.
No, I wasn't religious at all. I wasn't
religious. And then quick question is, how did you become an atheist? Because you said you were, but how did you become an atheist?
I became an atheist because the interpretations that are mainstream within Islam, especially in South Asia and in Pakistan, I became an atheist because of those interpretations. And I mean, I think anybody would become an atheist if they start thinking about that. I mean, I had an issue believing that women are half as intelligent as men, and somehow that God has said that to us. I had an issue believing that in Islam, we know about the Hudud ordinance. I had an issue with believing that in Islam, even if a woman gets raped, she'll have to bring 4 witnesses who would testify, otherwise she would be punished for zina. I had issues believing that I'm born in a Muslim family, no matter what kind of a life I lead, I still qualify somehow for heaven, but a good Christian or a Jew or, you know, a good Buddhist can never go to heaven. So these kind of questions and the answers I got, and from everybody, the answers I got from all schools of thought, from our local mullahs to chairman Islamic Ideology Council. I remember even going to the chairman Islamic Ideology Council back in 2008 when my mother was an MNA, asked him these questions, and unfortunately the answers they give, slavery for example. Our mainstream Islamic interpretation says that slavery is allowed in Islam. And they give their reasonings that, oh, maybe because there is a war, big war that's going to happen, the Armageddon, and after that we won't have jails and that's why we'll have slavery. Wow. These things made me an atheist, and I think it should make a lot of people think about the interpretations which are right now prevalent in our country and why they believe in it. And do they only believe in it because they were born in a certain family? I chose to think about these things. And for me, I'm alive once. I will die very soon.
True.
It matters the most to me to try to know that is there something after I die or is there nothing after I die? Because those are 2 different kind of lives that at least I would lead. So that one question became the obsession of my life. It led me to become an atheist, but then thank God I was introduced to ideologies within Islam, interpretations within Islam that made perfect sense to me. And gradually then I came back to this religion, which I now, I believe in it so much. It makes so much sense in my head that I've chosen to dedicate my life to trying to share those interpretations with the world. That if maybe there is another Hamza Abbasi who's looking at these things and it's not making sense to him, then maybe I could be a reason through which he could.
Of course. And we'll talk about your religious, inclinations, but at any point, did you think of becoming an agnostic? Which one do you think is a better option, a safer option, being an atheist?
Right now, I think the more intellectually honest position for anybody who's disgruntled by religion would be being an agnostic.
Agnostic.
That's the most honest intellectual position.
So
I don't know.
Have you ever read a famous author in the West called Bertrand Russell?
Bertrand Russell, yeah.
Oh,
I think he was the one who said that if God made everything, or if there is a God and his ultimate result of creation is Hitler, then I refuse to believe.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he was my hero at one point in time.
Oh, right. Because a lot of agnostics, they kind of, worship him. So, and he wrote the book "Why I'm Not a Christian," which I think is really funny.
I mean, considering that mostly the Western atheists and agnostics, their mindset or their mode of thinking is a reactionary mode towards how the Christian clergy oppressed them over the past. We know what happened to Galileo.
True.
We know what happened to Copernicus. We know what happened to all these people who were trying to tell you something that they observed, and they were oppressed by the religious, the Christian Maulvis of that time, basically. They were oppressed very badly. So this new atheist agnostic movement, mindset, secularism was a reaction to those interpretations. So they had very valid points. I mean, you can't have the Christian clergy at that time emphasizing that the earth is only 6,000 years old. But then there is science which tells us it's 4.5 billion years old. So obviously a reaction gradually would build up against such absurd claims that the clergy made at that time, which unfortunately has the same behavior has creeped into our religious clergy.
True.
We have now people telling us that Zameen is stationary. We have people who are telling us that no, there is absolutely no way that any adaptive evolution could happen in species. God made a statue of Adam by collecting 4 continents ki mitti, and that statue was there. So I respect atheists and agnostics. I don't think that they're ridiculous. I think they should be listened to. And at least in my lifetime, I try to answer their questions because I was in their place. I know what place it is. We have very honest people who are so disgruntled by religion that they, as a reaction, become atheists and agnostics. I mean, if things don't make sense to you, they don't make sense to you.
True.
And that's where I have respect for them, and I've dedicated my life to trying to organize those answers in such a way that for easy consumption of those people. And that's why I'm here I'm here in Dallas.
I know we'll just come to it. But Hamza, before we talk about you being in Dallas, I just want to know what then inspired you to become religious? Who or what did you read that somehow made you more inclined towards learning more about Islam? How did that journey happen? How did that sort of journey begin?
Well, certain parts of Islam, everybody agrees upon, right?
Right.
And they make sense. Like there is a creator of this whole scheme of things, which is outside of these dimensions. You can't understand him right now. You can't comprehend him.
Sure.
Okay, fine. You think maybe there is a super being. Even atheists believe that maybe DNA was seeded on Earth by a very advanced alien civilization. So it's not very hard to believe that outside of this whole matrix, maybe there is a very advanced being who we yet don't understand. And the scheme of things of Islam makes sense that he made this world as a testing laboratory. He's picking out these consciousnesses for an eternal life in a very good place. And he sent the consciousness of right and wrong is within you. Whoever is going to respect that consciousness of doing the right things will go to heaven. Whoever screws it up is going to go to hell. He sent messengers, prophets to remind people. Makes sense, right? You have to be a good person. You have to do good deeds. These parts always made sense to me, but the problematic parts, like slavery is allowed. Women.
No, I know what your problem was. My question was, and from being
I'm coming there. So from these answers, this 5% of Islam, actually 10% of Islam that didn't make sense to me, was answered by this method of seeing Islam, which is the Farahi school of thought, which has the present day it's being represented by Javed Ahmed Ghamidi Saab. We have a Ghamidi Center here. The interpretations here, it took me less than 3-4 years to come to a conclusion that, oh, yeah, this is right. This is true. Right. And it was a no-brainer for me to dedicate my life to sharing these answers with the people.
Fascinating. And then you have now moved to Dallas, where you are also presently perhaps studying at the Gandhi Center. Can you tell us briefly, are you doing some kind of a research? If so, what sort of subjects are you researching on? What's your methodology, and so on?
Firstly, I haven't moved here. I think it's going to be a very back and forth for me in the future. Maybe 3-4 months here, then rest of the time in Pakistan. So it's going to be a very back and forth.
Sure.
I have a two-pronged way to go about things. One is my personal learning.
Sure.
I'm solidifying the answers that I got, and I consider myself very lucky that I get to meet Gandhi Sahib in person. I get to learn from him in person. So I'm solidifying those answers that made sense to me initially, but now I'm filling those answers with facts. I'm filling those answers with with details which I could then later tell people with factual backing. Then the other side I'm really concentrating on, and that's where I'm researching, is the atheism and Islam side, like how Quran addresses all the questions that a modern atheist has in their mind. So that is my field of interest and my research. And the other prong is where I learned from Gandhi Sahib about the problematic questions that were answered, and now I'm going into the details of those answers.
Fascinating. So you're now following Javed Ahmad Gandhi Sahib, and you think his sort of teachings and his school of thought makes more sense to you. Can I ask you, how did you sort of find about Mr. Gandhi, about his writings? Was it accidental, or did you?
Yeah, it was completely accidental. It's actually quite funny. I was searching YouTube 6 years ago, maybe 6.5 years ago, 7 years ago, maybe. And this video came up on YouTube that will non-Muslims go to hell of Javed Ghamidi Sahib. And it's 17 minutes long. It's not even a very long video.
I think I've seen it.
You have seen it, right? Where he's just sitting out by himself and he's saying, I saw that video, and that was the time when I was partially agnostic. I mean, I became a theist. Like, I thought there is something, but he's not a personal God. He's maybe the God of Spinoza. I was in that mindset. I saw that video, and those 17 minutes made sense to me to a point. I was like, okay, he makes sense to me, but then why is nobody else saying it? And, you know, within Islam or within Abrahamic religions, why is nobody else saying what he's saying? That was, I think, the first step which made me research on him more, that he makes sense to me, but is he right? Why is everybody not agreeing with him? And that led to a journey which resulted in me being here now.
Fascinating. So I myself, after trying to do some research on you, I also did some research on Javed Sahib, and I read on his own Wikipedia page that Javed Ahmad Gandhi Sahib, thinks that Mullah Umar's government in Afghanistan was the ideal Islamic government. Is that true? And if so, how come that is?
No, he didn't say that.
It's on his Wikipedia page.
No, he didn't say that. He didn't say that at all.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why.
I think someone needs to go on his Wikipedia page and remove it, because it's actually...
There's a lot of stuff written on my Wikipedia page as well. A request. Wikipedia has actually lost its credibility because there's so much stuff written about me on Wikipedia, which I'm like, for example, I went to film school in US, or I did my bachelor's in US. See Wikipedia. It's not true.
Not true. I think,
no, I don't think he said that.
No problem.
I don't.
So Hamza, the other thing is, I also read somewhere that Javed Ahmad Gandhi Sahib thinks that democracy is actually a sham. It's not the right thing as a system of governance. Is that something? That is also?
You're actually saying something quite the opposite.
Oh, okay.
Gandhi Sahib has written an entire chapter in his book Mizan and his short essays collection that democracy, I mean, you could debate what form of democracy do you want? Do you want presidential system, parliamentary system, or do you want your own kind of system? But that is exactly what God or Allah wants from Muslims. Quran is very clear on it that Amruhum Shura Bainahum. Muslims will decide their matters, ijtimai matters, with mutual consultation. If you see how the first 4 caliphs were elected, that was a very primordial form of democracy. God has, in another place in Surah Baqarah, where the Bani Israel wanted a king.
Right.
So Allah Ta'ala has actually tried to tell them that, are you insane? You want a king who will have absolute authority over you, who is going to misuse his authority? So Amruhum Shura Bainahum is a principle which Gandhi said very clearly. You should see Khutbat-e Dallas, the Dallas lectures. It's 10 hours, but if you see the 4th hour, he's given this 1 hour lecture on the fact that how Allah Ta'ala wants Muslims to decide their matters with mutual consultation. Amruhum Shura Bainahum. Kingdom is anti-Islamic. Any form of military dictatorship is anti-Islamic. Any form of government of Muslims which does not have the consent of Muslims is un-Islamic. It's something that Allah Ta'ala has despised in the Quran. I mean, later on in the Quran, Allah Ta'ala did appoint Saul as the king of Israelites, but he really despised the kingdom philosophy and the kings, and instead he said Amrum Shura Bainahum. So I'm surprised that you think that Gandhi Sahib said that democracy is un-Islamic.
Because it was on his Wikipedia page, so I just followed that. But I have one question about Gandhi Sahib on my own without reading anywhere, which is that he seems, when you sort of listen to him, he seems very reasonable and a very person who thinks with logic and reason. So my question is, why would someone who comes across as so sane and sensible, why would he name a center in Dallas on his own name? Isn't this a conflict of interest?
Actually, he didn't name it. He didn't name it.
Called the Gandhi Center of Islamic Studies.
Yeah, he didn't name it himself. It was Al-Mawrid US, particularly Farhan Said Sahib, who's
but then that's his foundation as well.
Yeah, so Al-Mawrid is basically what he named. Al-Mawrid is his organization. Gandhi Center is an initiative which Farhan Said Sahib and Al-Mawrid US started.
But my question,
and the reason why it was, why it was named Gandhi is to pay tribute to him, is to respect him, just like we have Allama Iqbal Open University. So it's not something that where only Gandhiism is taught or Gandhi Sahib is taught. It's basically to give him respect. And that's where the institution has been named after him, not by him, but the people here of Al-Mawrid US.
Right, right. Because I personally think it kind of dilutes the credibility when you name an institution whilst you're alive in your own name. But then again, that's his.
He didn't actually. It's Al-Mawrid US who wanted to do that, and the sole reason for that was to pay tribute to him and to show him respect. That's why it was named Gandhi Center of Islam.
Fascinating. So Hamza, I went on the website and I was trying to see what else is there. They're also selling books which range from $10 to $200 a pack. Don't you think it's a little bit too expensive if you're trying to spread the word of Islam? And number two, is it not trying to become a commercial enterprise rather than a educational institution?
No, for now, because it's a very underfunded institution, because let's face it, what Gandhi Sahib has to say or what Al-Mawrid is saying is not popular at all with the masses. They like to go with the sensational interpretations of Islam. Right. They like to go with the interpretations of Islam which have a sense of glory in them or sense of false glory, I would say. So what he's saying is not that popular in the world right now. And the model of Gandhi Center is more self-sustaining in the future. So this part is one of that strategy, is to make it more self-sustaining and not just depend on donations to run the center. So I think that's one of the reasons. Yeah.
Makes sense. Hamza, right towards the very end, do you have any future plans to be a Islamic preacher, evangelist, or do you just want to be a scholar? Are you learning Arabic language as well?
No, I'm not going to be a scholar, because let's face it, being a scholar is a lifetime of dedication in books. I want to be a speaker. I want to share my answers with the people. I want to speak about ideas, about things which are problematic, which are negative for our society. So I see myself not as a preacher, but somebody who's a speaker in future, and he talks about these things.
Interesting. Well, Hamza, on a very lighter note, before we end the interview, are you watching the program on Z5 called Chudels?
No, actually not. But I saw its trailer. I think it looked nice. It looked fine.
Fair enough. So you haven't seen it yet?
I have not seen it at all.
Okay. And what do you think of Ertugrul, the Turkish play? It's being aired globally and in Pakistan as well. Do you think it's like it depicts the Islamic history the way it should have been?
See, I'm just happy something became such a big success without an item number in it.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good answer. So Hamza, thank you so much for your time, and
Thank you
we
so
do
much.
hope, inshallah, that you will join us in future as well. Perhaps we can talk in more detail about, Islam and Islamic history, and I
Yeah,
think
I'd
that
love
would
to
be
share
really
my
good for
answers, man.
viewers.
That's something I'll talk about any day, anytime, inshallah, whenever
Inshallah,
you want.
inshallah. So
Okay.
viewers, that was it, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.